All right. I apologize. It's taking forever. I got a little nervous because I couldn't find the notes. And but luckily I did. Okay. So I have the notes, and I have the law that I was looking for. I not switched law clerks, but my law clerk left in between the hearings, and so kind of where the notes were and all that. So we located my law clerk's notes and the law and some of my notes, but I don't have, I don't have my verbatim notes, but I have my summary notes. So I think we're still in good shape. Okay, so for my summary notes, all right, where did I pull those up? The summary notes is on this side. Okay, so for the summary notes, essentially, we reviewed the law and indicate that a material change in circumstances, of course, is necessary. Visitation may be addressed without this showing once in every 2-year period. And based upon the review of the specific statute, case law on the proper analysis below. Okay, let me pull that. After review and this is my summary notes. I don't specifically recall it, but I do remember that there was sufficient evidence to defeat a directed verdict is my summary notes. I do recall there being some concern about that significantly, but I wrote down here that it was just sufficient is what I wrote, just sufficient. All right. Does that put everybody where we need?
Yes, Judge, that is where we left off. But prior to proceeding with testimony and picking up with evidence, I do.
Can you speak up a little louder for me, please?
Yes, and I'm gonna see if I can turn my microphone up too. Okay, is this a little better?
Yes.
Is this a little better? Okay. And Judge, before we proceed with evidence and testimony, I do just want to ask, I guess, I don't know, a technicality question.
Sure.
So I've been communicating with counsel, Ms. Kreitz, and there was some issues or confusion with securing a court reporter. And so what we discovered from Veritex, which is the court reporter that had been transcribing or recording the proceedings, is Veritex does not have anyone available this morning, but indicated that if the court records, they will transcribe. So with that, from Veritex, I wanted to inquire whether or not Veritex could have access to these recordings. I understand it is being recorded now via the Zoom platform, but to the extent that Veritex will transcribe, can this recording be available to them?
No, I understand the issue that you might find yourself, but that is not a process I'm going to start. If I start it for you, I'll be doing it for everyone, and it's not proper, so I cannot do that.
Okay. May I have 2 minutes just to confer with my client briefly, Judge?
Mm-hmm.
Your Honor, so I've been conferring with my client. The first few appearances we've made in this case, we've had takedown, and I would like to inquire whether the court would either, one, allow us an opportunity to secure a court reporter, or two, put us on another day this week.
You've been doing for the last 2 hours. You've had 2 hours.
Judge, we relied upon opposing counsel's representation that they would secure a court reporter. And so when I inquired about it over this period of time, their office was contacting Veritex. For whatever reason, I'm not sure, Veritex said no one is available. That was the first that I learned of that. And so since then, that is what we have been discussing. So Judge, we were under the impression that Veritex would have a court reporter present.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have the time to do it. I've already scheduled out how it's going to hear cases. And so this is your opportunity. You were asking for 5 hours, and so I've made this available, this time set for that. So we're moving forward. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to look for those additional notes. Even the last hearing was recorded. So I have my summary notes. I know what my ruling was to get here. So we can go ahead and proceed, and then I can always go back and review those, even if I don't find those notes. So I'm satisfied.
Okay. The last time that we were here, Your Honor, as you mentioned, the petitioner's case rested. I had moved for a directed verdict, and now we are here with proceedings. So are we proceeding with respondents?
Yes, we are. That's what we are.
All right. All right. So I called my client, Ariel King, to the witness stand. And Ms. King, if you can unmute. And Ms. King, you are divorced from the petitioner in this case, Adrian Maynard. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and you all were divorced by a divorce decree that was entered in DeKalb County on August 28th of 2019. Is that correct?
That's correct, actually by Judge Barrie.
Okay, I'm going to show you what has been pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 1. If I may have sharing capabilities, please. This is the 2-page divorce decree. Do you see that on your screen?
I do.
Okay, and this is a file step copy of your divorce decree. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I move to tender into evidence Respondents Exhibit 1.
No objection.
Respondent 1, any objections? Any
No,
objection?
Your Honor. No objection.
All right, so admitted.
And Ms. King, when you all divorced, from your ex-husband, was that through a settlement agreement or was there a trial?
That was a settlement agreement.
I'm going to show you what I have pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 2, which is a marital settlement agreement. I'm just going to scroll down so you can see the entirety of the document. Tender into evidence Respondents Exhibit 2.
No objection.
Admitted 2, so admitted.
And I'll ask you, Ms. King, about Respondents Exhibit 3. The last time we were here, that had already been tendered into evidence, but I'm going to show you Respondents Exhibit 3. You do recognize that to be the consent permanent parenting plan from your divorce?
Yes, we actually agreed to that before the divorce was even finalized.
Okay, so I want to ask you about that. You all have one child together, correct?
Yes.
What is her name and age?
She is 6 years old.
And you mentioned that you all had entered into an agreement beforehand. What do you mean by that?
So in about 2018, around Christmas time, her father, Adrian, actually got her a couple of days early for like Christmas visitation. We actually had a verbal agreement at the time. And during that time, he actually kept her for close to a month and said that without paperwork, he would not like return her, back to me, if that makes sense. And from there, I went to, the courts and we had to get a temporary parenting plan put in place, beforehand, essentially. But that was during the time where he kept her for a visitation for, I would say 3.5 weeks. I couldn't see her or anything like that.
Okay, was that the withholding of visitation that the guardian had testified to the last time we were here?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, that was during that time, close to a month. I had no way of seeing her or finding her. No idea where she was, honestly.
Now, at the time that you all had your divorce had been finalized, August of 2019, at that time, where were you living?
In 2019, I believe I was living in Snellville at that point.
Here in Georgia?
Yes, I was definitely in Georgia. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you know where Mr. Maynard was living?
I would say in Georgia, but I never did have an address at that time, so I'm not quite sure.
Okay. Well, there was some testimony from the guardian that at one point Dad was in Texas while you were here in Georgia. When was that?
So I honestly am not 100% sure of what date he moved to Georgia officially. I know throughout my pregnancy, I actually left when I was 6 weeks pregnant. So from my pregnancy to Ayavi's birth till she was probably close to a year old, I would say. So probably somewhere in 2018, he officially moved here, I'm guessing. But that's just what I have to go based off of our verbal agreements for visitation that we had at the time.
Okay. When did you all physically separate and were no longer living as husband and wife?
When I was 6 weeks pregnant. So that would have been, I guess, the summer of 2016.
During the time that you all were separated, were there any discussions about the status of your relationship?
There was, attempts made to be able to work things out, but ultimately, it just became, it was better for us to separate, essentially.
Now, when you all separated in 2016, I understand the divorce wasn't finalized until 2019, but when you physically separated in 2016, were there discussions that you had with Mr. Maynard via text or by phone regarding seeing other people?
Yes, that was something that did happen. During, I guess towards the beginning, we were somewhat cordial. So there would be certain things that he would mention as far as his, doings, or relationships and things. And then after I had Ayavi as well, we had some open conversation about me dating as well.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's already been entered into evidence as Respondents Exhibit 14. which was a text exchange between you and Mr. Maynard in July of 2017. Do you recall Respondents Exhibit 17?
I do.
Okay, do you see that here on your screen?
I do.
Okay. Oops, give me 1 second. Okay, so I want to ask you about the text exchange that you and him had about, well, first and foremost, looking at this text exchange, who is in the blue conversation and who is in the gray conversation?
Blue conversation would be my side, and the gray side would be his side.
Okay, so can you explain to the court during this text exchange what you all discussed when he was asking you about your boyfriend and a man being around you all's daughter?
Yes, I honestly thought it was joking because we had had so many, open conversations about things, and ultimately we weren't together, realistically at that point. So when he was asking about, is that my boyfriend or is, that kind of thing, I tried to joke it off, but yes, you can definitely see that he was aware, but not quite happy with me moving on, essentially.
And this was July of 2017 before the divorce was finalized?
Yes.
I'm sorry, what was this again?
July of 2017. I want to also ask you about what's already been entered into evidence as Respondents Exhibit 15. Okay, do you see what's marked as Respondents Exhibit 15 on your screen?
Yes.
Okay. I crossed Mr. Maynard about this, but I want to ask you about it as well. This text exchange that you had with Mr. Maynard in April of 2018, there were conversations that you and him had about you all's relationship and men. Can you explain to the court what you all discussed then in April of 2018?
Yeah. This is, of course, before the parenting plan was put in place, when he and I were just on the verbal, working it out ourselves. But this would have been after an exchange or after an incident at his great grandmother or at his grandmother's house, where he became really upset, cursing, yelling, just very, very angry behavior, which is really not out of the ordinary, unfortunately, for, the type of language that he does use with me. And unfortunately, this incident, like others, was actually in front of Evie, that this was going on. But apparently he, felt that there was an issue with me being around someone else, in front of Evie. But it was clear that we had had discussions about it before. It was clear that he also, had a partner as well. And I really couldn't quite understand, the anger or the issue, honestly. But the text messages are truly an indication of exactly why I left, ultimately, due to things becoming on that path, starting to become physically abusive, and definitely was already verbally violent for sure. But this was just one incident far before the parenting plan where he was aware of what was going on for sure.
Now, during the last time we were here as well, there was testimony, including from the guardian, that Mr. Maynard was aware or introduced you to the polyamorous. And excuse me if I'm not categorizing it correctly, but can you explain to the court what communications you had with Mr. Maynard prior to the divorce being finalized about polyamorous?
Yeah, this was actually before I even left Texas. Would put on different videos of different couples and polyamorous relationships, and talk about his experiences and his research that he has, not experiences, but his research into it and what he's seen, of it. What he'd like to try or what he was interested in and those kind of things. And when we separated, I guess in some ways, it was somewhat like that, but we really weren't together in that sense. We were just cordial and still friendly at that time. So he definitely did introduce me to it for sure. I can remember very, very many conversations about it, honestly. And it was kind of a tough conversation for us in the beginning.
And then where did that conversation lead as far as the marriage and the relationship?
It kind of was, I guess, somewhat, just for the simple fact that it allowed us to be able to separate, still be able to see each other. If we did deal with each other, if we didn't, kind of thing, it just made things more open, which honestly the distance in and of itself really did, because we were separated at the time. But it was somewhat of an agreement of sorts, for that. But that would have been, of course, before we officially broke things off.
And you
came right before you all decided that it was going to be over. You tried this polyamorous relationship and you were also already in distanced from each other. So that was sort of a compromise.
So we didn't start seeing, well, I didn't start seeing anyone else until after I had IEV. So
Until when?
until after I had IEV. So I didn't start seeing anyone until like the summer of 2017. So until that time, I was, only with him. If we were separated, I was just, pregnant and on my own kind of thing. But until the summer of 2017 is when I started actually dating at that point. But throughout that time, he had been open, conversationally with me about the women that he had been dating at that point. One of them being his now current wife, from what I
Okay,
understand.
so what I'm asking though is, was there a time where you all experienced that in your relationship?
I can't say officially, no. I mean, I guess unofficially it was like that, but we never officially experienced that in our relationship, no ma'am.
Okay, he asked for you to do it, but you didn't do it. So you're
No.
saying he kind of introduced the concept to you, and then later when you started your own relationships, you started experiencing or experimenting or involving yourself in a polyamorous relationship.
That's correct. I mean, at that point, it wasn't as much the issue with the polyamorous relationship as a whole. It just became that I saw that he and I weren't going to work out personally. So it wasn't an issue as far as a polyamory, but he and I had differences at that time. So I was open to polyamory as a whole.
One thing that Mr. Maynard talked about when I asked him about the polyamorous was he mentioned that you all talked about dating openly or openly dating. Is that correct? Did y'all talk about that?
We talked about us dating at that point, but like I said, we weren't in a marriage since I left, realistically. Like we never did officially get back together.
And you said you left the marital home with Mr. Maynard when you were 6 weeks pregnant?
That's correct.
Okay.
Your Honor, if I may, I'm going to object to the line of questioning. I'm just not sure how it's relevant if we're litigating a modification. It seems as though the issues being covered are all prior to the party's divorce. And as it pertains to the modification, we're discussing post the party's divorce. I don't see how relitigating the issues of their divorce is relevant in this matter.
Your response?
Yes, Judge. So the court may recall the last couple of days that we were here. One of the main things that was raised to the court as an alleged change in circumstance was the polyamorous relationship. And there was allegations by the other side that mom had people in and out of her home with a minor child. During the last time we were here, there was also testimony and admission by Mr. Maynard and testimony from the guardian that Mr. Maynard admits that polyamorous relationship he introduced her to prior to the divorce, as well as him being aware of it prior to the divorce. So in order for the court to make an assessment to determine whether or not there's been a material change in condition that affects the welfare of the child, it's important for the court to understand what the condition was prior to the divorce being finalized versus now for the court to even determine what the change in condition is.
Okay.
It's certainly relevant.
I agree. Overruled. You may proceed.
Ms. King, so the last question I asked you was, did you leave the marital home when you were 6 weeks pregnant? And you testified yes. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So is it safe to say or conclude that since Ivy had been born in February 2017 to now, she has been living primarily in your household?
Oh, that's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Only in my household. Yes.
Okay. And the time that she has been with her dad, it was for visitation pursuant to the court order. Is that correct?
Well, before we had a verbal agreement, and then once he, took her at that time, then we had to get the court agreement. But yes.
Now, was there, and this is prior to the divorce decree being entered August of 2019, was there a time, whether it's during the visitation exchanges or whenever you would see Mr. Maynard, was there ever a time that you had any other individuals that you were in a relationship with present during those exchanges?
Yes, Melody will often ride down to drop Evie off.
When you say ride down with you?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ride down with me to Noonan, Georgia. That's the halfway point, the meeting spot between the two of us. And she would often ride down to the exchange points, essentially, with me and Ivy.
Okay. You said that's the halfway point. What city does Mr. Maynard live in?
It's my understanding he lives in Columbus.
Okay, Georgia?
Yeah, Georgia.
All right, so after you all, physically separated, you all had a discussion about your relationship status and all of that. You all still ultimately reached a settlement agreement in your divorce. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, I want to explore the parenting plan that you all reached an agreement on. Okay, I'm now displaying Respondents Exhibit 3 back on your screen here. It looks like you all consented that you would share joint legal custody and that you would be the primary physical custodian. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It relates to any disputes, like if you all had you couldn't reach an agreement on the 4 main areas of education, healthcare, religion, and extracurricular activities. After you all talk about it, it looks like if y'all can't agree that you would have time-breaking authority in those areas. Is that correct as well?
Yes, it is.
Okay. What type of parenting plan did you all agree to for Mr. Maynard?
What type? I mean, me having primary physical custody and him having weekend visitations. Is that what you're asking?
Yes. What can you detail what the weekend visitation is?
The initial agreement was that I would have her, throughout the week, and then every other weekend he would be able to have her and visit with her from Friday to Sunday. At the time of the parenting plan, that was from 9:30 on Friday to 9:30 on Sunday.
Okay. And you said you all meet at a halfway point in Noonan, Georgia?
Yes, ma'am.
Where exactly do you meet in Noonan, Georgia?
At a pilot gas station in Noonan, Georgia.
Okay. And then it looks like you all alternate the holidays and the school breaks?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I want to talk to you about your current living arrangements.
Okay.
What city do you currently reside in now?
Stone Mountain, Georgia.
And who all resides with you in your household?
At this time, Ivy and Terrence are living here. I have a friend staying with for a moment. T.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
I have a childhood friend. She needed a place to stay, so I have her staying here for a
You
moment.
have Terrence in the home with you, the child, and a friend.
A childhood friend, yes, she needed a
Her name
room.
is T.
Yes, Tashira.
Okay. Is T new? Did you mention her last hearing?
Excuse me?
Did you mention T at the last hearing?
Yeah, she's just staying for a moment. She's not living here. That's why I said she's not living at this time. She's just staying for a moment.
She's not a part of your polyamorous relationship?
Absolutely not. No, ma'am.
Okay. All right.
So the individual that was discussed the last time we were here that was part of the polyamorous relationship was who?
Melody King.
Okay.
And is Melanie, I know at one point there was that she was no longer in the picture. Is that that's that correct?
That's correct. That actually happened of last year.
Okay.
And I think that's where some of the confusion came in with the Guardian, because she exited right before the Guardian's actual interview. And like once we got talking with her, her appointment was made essentially.
Yeah, because she was saying that the child was having some issues kind of dealing with the loss of Melanie not being around. So I'm assuming that Melanie had left, but my question really was, had she come back in? Because you know how relationships are.
No, ma'am. I think that was the confusion that was taken as well. Melody was coming to things, but she never did move back in.
Okay, thank you.
And how long have you well, let me just take it step by step. You're currently in a relationship with Terrence King?
Yes, ma'am.
And is our guardian with us? Hold on a second. The way I have this thing set up, I can't really see it very good.
She is, Your Honor.
She is.
Okay, I see her now. Okay, thank you. All right, go ahead.
How long have you been in a relationship with Terrence King?
Since the end of 2017. Right around November of 2017.
And during that time, or excuse me, at which point in time did you and Terrence King begin living together?
Around beginning of 2018, I believe.
All right, so you started your relationship with Terrence King November of 2017, and you began living together in 2018?
That's correct.
Okay. Was Ivy also living in that household with you all?
Yes, she was.
Okay. So how long has Ivy known Terrence King?
Since before she was 1, so a few months old.
Okay, and do you know whether or not Mr. Maynard knew you were in a relationship at that time?
I would definitely say he would. Like I said, Melody would come down to visit. He had made plenty of references before. We had spoken about it, and he even referenced it in the text messages. So he was definitely aware.
Okay. And so at that time, was it you, Melody, and Terrence King in a relationship?
That's correct. It's always only just been us three in the relationship.
Okay.
Is this relation, I know you were in that relationship at the time you were considering, and I'm not indicating that you need to foreclose that, but I was just wondering, is that something that you all still are experiencing or still open to, or was this a kind of like a situation where it just kind of happened? Or are you in a situation now where you do look for another person?
So that was a situation that actually just happened. It's been Terrence and I since then, and it currently is and probably will be for some time. It's
Okay.
not closed too, but we're not actively looking at all. No, ma'am. It's just
Okay.
us, right?
Okay. All right. Thank you. You may continue.
Okay. And so how long would you say the three of you, Melody and Terrence, were in a relationship? Like, can you quantify it for the court?
Yeah, we were in a committed relationship from 2017 to 2022. So for about 4 years.
So Ms. King, I want to ask you, fast forward to the divorce being finalized. Can you explain whether Mr. Maynard was exercising his parenting time with Ivy?
When the divorce was finalized, you're saying?
Yes, so August of 2019. Since the divorce had been finalized, can you tell us about whether Mr. Maynard had been exercising his parenting time with Ivy?
Yes, he's missed probably 3 weekends since then, but ultimately he has been exercising his parenting plan outside of those times. Yes.
Okay. And prior to the divorce being finalized, when that temporary order was in place, was he exercising that parenting time as well?
He would ask for her. I would, let her go. It just depended on it. He wasn't set with it and definitely was not asking regularly for sure. No.
Okay. All right. Now, there was a period in time where Mr. Maynard did not call Ivy. Can you explain to the court that period of time?
That period of time was probably from 2020 to 2021. He just didn't reach out. They were speaking, through Facebook Messenger. And at a certain point, he just stopped calling. The calls did not start until the case was filed, as a matter of fact.
Okay. When you said they would speak through Facebook Messenger, can you describe how that would happen?
Ivy, I would be able to set her up for a video call with him through Facebook Messenger at that time.
And so how often would you say, if you had to quantify it, he would talk to her in the months span of time?
During that period of time, like I said, I cannot say that in a month I could guarantee a call. From 2020 to 2021, there may have been 3 maybe calls. And I say that because there's no record of it at all. And that's just me guessing.
Okay. Now you mentioned that the calls didn't happen, I guess frequently, or I forget the word you used, until the case was filed in October 2021.
That's correct. It went from virtually no calls to calling probably every day, and almost like trying to state or like I was in some way doing something to stop that. It just was a new thing at the end of the day. It wasn't something that he was previously doing. So he probably started calling maybe once a day or once every other day once the case was started.
I want to ask you about Ivy. What grade is she in?
She's currently in 1st grade.
Now, the last time we were here, she was in kindergarten, and there was testimony about her testing on a 1st grade level at that point. Can you explain to the court how she's doing academically?
She's doing great. She just finished up her, I guess, last round of gifted testing. So waiting on those results to come back, but she's still reading at a much higher grade level. She regularly scores in the top 90th percentile of her testing and whatnot. Her progress reports come back great. She's doing excellent.
Okay. And there's been allegations that Ivy has been bouncing around or moving from school to school. How many elementary schools has she actually attended?
Her 1st year of kindergarten, she started at a private school and then elementary school. So just choice preparatory and elementary.
Okay. And we heard testimony from the guardian about your reasonings for changing that school, but can you explain to the court in your own words why you changed her from the private school at choice to her current school?
I would say it was 2-part. Definitely, I wanted a better curriculum for her. But I also heard her desire to be able to be around, more kids her age, ride the bus, those kind of things. So also take into consideration what she wanted as well.
Okay. And when you say you wanted more for her academically, were there any issues with the curriculum?
At Choice Preparatory, you're saying?
Yes, sorry, yes.
At Choice Preparatory, I feel like the curriculum, I'm trying to figure out how to say it. I feel like the curriculum was not as developed for advancement, if that makes they would test her, but it was more so self-paced, which can work. But I also felt like I wanted her to be able to have something a little bit more rigorous and a little bit more hands-on, like the style that I did with her when I homeschooled her or worked with her at home, essentially.
And did you make Mr. Maynard aware of the school choices that you were making for IABI during that time?
Absolutely. From Choice Preparatory, I sent him the packet. He had the school's contact on that, of course. I'm gonna let him know well in advance that I'll be sending her, to Choice Preparatory at that time. It's my understanding that he never did make contact, and never did actually respond to me, regarding that he had, confirming that he sent in the packet or whatever. And then when it came time for Shadow Rock Elementary, I made him aware of that as well. And also let him know that while I put his name, it kind of seems like he didn't quite trust me to fill in his information or, those kind of things. So I sent it to him again to let him fill out his own information, essentially. So I definitely made him aware.
Okay, and when you were referring to an intake packet at Choice, why was there an intake packet? Can you explain that process?
I would think with most schools they have some sort of admission packet. I'm not sure if intake is the exact best word, but it has some sort of like a mission packet where they need your information, child's information, parents' information, and of course, if the parent would like to be contacted, they would need to fill out that information. Choice Preparatory let me know that they, would accept, my intake packet, but that if he wanted to fill one out, then he would be able to, since we weren't, in a marital situation.
Okay. And the last time we were here, when I asked Mr. Maynard about that, he did acknowledge that you contacted him, but do you know, to your knowledge, whether he ever completed that packet and submitted it to the school?
It's to my knowledge, no. As far as I know from the director, he never did.
Is IABI involved in any extracurriculars? Can you explain to the court that area of her life?
Yes, Evie's in karate or taekwondo. And she's been doing that for a few months now. She just got her yellow belt, actually.
Does IABI have any friends at school?
Evie is a social butterfly. Evie has friends everywhere she goes. She has very many friends in her class, and I go up there and visit with them. We just went on a field trip, as a matter of fact. So she has friends in her class, on the bus, in the neighborhood. She's a social butterfly.
Okay. You say she has friends in your neighborhood as well?
Yes.
Okay. Does she play with any of them at the playground, or does she do anything with those friends?
Some of them come over to our house. Sometimes, we'll go to the park and for play dates there. Sometimes we go do an activity, a skating, or go to a mall or something. But yeah, she definitely does things with them.
I want to ask you about your parenting style, because there have been allegations, and you heard testimony about you allowing IABI to cook and alleged burns on her arms and her pretty much raising herself. Can you explain to the court what your response is to those allegations?
My parenting style would definitely be closer to like the Montessori educational style. That's a little bit more, I guess, hands-on for the children. Now, to say that, of course, means that I wouldn't have to be there more monitoring, have to be there more being able to assist her in doing the things, essentially. So it's definitely by no means her doing her doing the task or things herself. I'm there to watch, to help, to, see if she needs any assistance with it. And I also have to be able to state this is something that Evie has always wanted to do, that she's always been that kid that I can do it, let me do it myself kind of thing. And I really started following that because that's something that I saw her more so gravitating towards. But as far as cooking and those kind of things by herself, air fryer burns, it's a greaseless fryer, closer to a microwave than any type of frying experience. Essentially, it does not involve any grease at all. And that's when she wants to. Just as, Tori mentioned, sometimes she kind of gets picky, like most at this time, 4 or 5, now 6-year-olds do. But no, ma'am, just not doing or raising herself. We are definitely here and present.
Okay, so there was no grease burn or any burn that caused her to go to a hospital from cooking?
No, ma'am. The fight, I guess I could say, I can't even say burn, really wouldn't even be the best word for it. But I think some of the things, she loves the drama, kind of come off a little bit dramatic. It didn't leave any mark of any sort. It barely turned red. I put it under a little bit of cold water, put a little topical cream on it, and in 2 days it was gone. It was definitely not a burn size of a pea, a green pea. And
Where are you saying that burn came from again?
she was getting out nuggets out of I guess it's called an air fryer, but it uses air to fry things. So it's closer to like a microwave or like a
So
toaster.
how did you get the burn?
So she was taking it out and had her like the oven mitts on, and I was right there with her, but it touched just the corner of her arm. So she was reaching for something and it touched just the corner of her wrist.
You're saying she was reaching into the air fryer.
She was taking something out in the tray that it was on. So she doesn't have to reach, fully into anything. It's not like an oven of that sort. Just pull the little tray and it, already kind of pops out, if that makes sense. She
Right.
touched the tray. She sat it on the counter and her arm just touched the tray while it was hot.
Oh, okay. I see.
And you mentioned that you were present?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yep, I was
Yeah.
right under cold water.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I said I was right there. We put it right under cold water.
Okay. Just to be clear, there was no medical treatment or anything that was required after that.
No, there was nothing major about it. Minor burn, no blister. Like I said, the little discoloration was gone in 2 days.
As far as IFE's medical needs, who handles IFE's medical needs as far as any appointments and ensuring that she's cared for?
That would be me.
Have you always been the primary parent to handle that?
Absolutely, yes. That's always been me.
Can you describe to the court whether there are any I'll say unique characteristics or conditions, however you want to describe it, as it relates to Ariel and her feet?
Ivy's pinky toe. She was born with a triangle-shaped pinky toe. It definitely is not brittle or cracking or any of that kind of things. It is just a little bit hardened. It always has been. It came out as a little triangle. And I remember asking my mom about it, as a matter of fact, if it was normal. But she's always had it. It kind of grows a little bit fast and thicker, but it's something that runs in my family. I have several aunts with it on my dad's side, on my mom's side. My grandmother has a hardened pinky toe as well. It's not a fungus. It's not anything like that. It's genetic, hereditary.
And does it require any special treatment from time to time, or how does it become an issue, if at all?
I can't even say that it becomes an issue like anything else, any other nails that you would have. You just trim them regularly, but it's no issue at all. It just looks a little different. But it's just a little bit of a triangle, little hard toe nail.
Now, there were some allegations and testimony by Mr. Maynard about him having to take IV for treatment regarding her feet earlier this year. Can you speak to that?
I've always, been quite confused about that, honestly. It's just been several conversations where I've let him know that it is hereditary. There have been times that he's taken her to the doctor, but if she follows up, which she has several times with her primary care physician, it's always been said that there's no athlete's feet, that there's no fungus, there's nothing present from any of the primary care physicians that I've seen or, taken her to, essentially. So I can't really, I've never really understood why that's been necessary, but she doesn't have any foot or fungal or any issues that anyone of her primary care has said.
And you said that you've had a conversation with Mr. Maynard about her feet.
He sent pictures like many other things over the year, trying to state that there's an issue. But yeah, I've let him know that's how her pinky toe is. It's how it's always been.
Okay, I want to show you what I pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 55. Can you see Respondents Exhibit 55 on your screen?
I can.
I mean 25. Sorry if I said 55. I meant 25. Respondents Exhibit 25. It looks like this is a June 2022 text exchange between you and Mr. Maynard regarding IFE's feet and fungus. Do you recall that text exchange?
I do.
Okay, is this a fair and accurate copy of the text exchange that you and him had regarding her feet?
It is.
Okay, I move to tender into evidence Respondents Exhibit 25.
What is the date?
June 2022.
What's your position?
No objection, Your Honor. I just needed to know the date of those messages.
Okay. What was that exhibit again?
25. Respondents Exhibit 25.
Okay.
Is it entered, Your Honor?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So Ms. King, I'll ask you again, is it the brown or the gray communications? Is that Mr. Maynard and you're in the blue communications?
That's correct.
Okay. So going back up, it looks like Mr. Maynard reached out to you about a couple of things, but I'll ask you first just about the foot. I'm going to scroll down to that conversation. Here, looks like he's talking about an antifungal cream, and he's talking about Ivy wearing socks. So can you tell us about you all's communications in June of 2022 about the antifungal cream for Ivy and then the issue about socks?
Yes, that was one of the times that he mentioned that he had taken her to the doctor. I thought he was saying something about the bottom of her foot. I never really understood that he was saying that there was an issue with her toe, that's what that was prescribed for. But while I initially let him know, I'll, use it, after I got the second opinion from her primary care physician, she let me know that it was not necessary. But as far as the foot and the socks, that was something that was Evie's choice. And at a certain point, it just became something that, she started doing. Of course, in the wintertime to stay warm, or, it just depends. But no one's ever made her wear or not wear socks, as a matter of fact. That's never been a force or discipline or anything of that sort.
Okay. When you said that's something Ivy just started doing, what are you referring to?
Not wearing socks. I don't wear socks most times, me personally. So I'm not sure that's something that she just saw me doing, or, just kind of picked up, kind of copying kind of thing. But she just started, and because I never really had an issue with it. But it was never anything that was, told to her or, imposed upon her by any means, for sure.
Okay. It looks like one thing that Mr. Maynard mentioned in this text exchange, here he says the assumption is based on her having had these feet issues since at least August 30th of 2019, coupled with the 6 pairs of shoes that are 2 sizes too small I've received her in since the start of this case. Does that ring to be true that there have been feet issues since at least 2019, or this condition that she's experienced has been since 2019?
Absolutely not. And I've honestly, I've even asked her primary care physician kind of how that could happen. How could she keep getting diagnosed by one doctor with something and by another doctor, with something else? It was explained to me that you can kind of give symptoms and a doctor will prescribe something and, state something essentially. But no, it's never been my experience. I've never seen anything as far as feet issues with her. As far as shoes and too small sizes, anyone who can get things from a TJ Maxx or a Burlington or, some of those different kind of stores, not all shoe sizes are going to have the same number. They definitely did all fit her feet, however, but I'm not sure if that's what he was referring to in that time.
Mm-hmm. So as it relates to
So what's the date of this text message again?
June of 2022.
And how old would she have been in June of 2022?
She'd have been 4
or 5, right? She was born February 2017.
2017.
Yeah, so June of 2022, she would have been 5.
Okay.
So as it relates, can you talk to the court about the back? Because Mr. Maynard raised concerns about her shoes. And one thing he submitted into evidence, and I'll just share it with you to get your testimony about it. One thing he submitted into evidence was, I believe it was plaintiff's exhibit F as in, F as in Frank is what I believe it was entered as. He submitted this photo of shoes. Can you first and foremost, do you recognize these shoes?
Those are one of Ivy's play shoes, yes.
Okay. So can you explain to the court the situation with Ivy's shoes?
Ivy is a beautiful, I would say, Chrissy loves to get dressed, but Ivy is a rough kid. And one of the things that she loves doing is going to the park and running and being outside and outdoors. So with that, I've gotten her, shoes specifically designated for park, running, playing, those kind of things. So where she doesn't have to mess up, her other school or dressy or, more casual shoes. So these are one of the shoes that are specifically designated for the park. This is a play shoe.
Okay. So Ivy has other shoes besides this play shoe that's shown here?
Yeah, so many other shoes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Sorry, 1 second, please. You may proceed.
Okay. And so Ms. King, you mentioned that you have designated shoes that Ivy plays in versus designated shoes that she may wear to school or any other place?
Yeah, specifically for the purpose of getting dirty.
Okay.
What number is that? The shoes?
This was petitioners F. They labeled their exhibits as letters, and it was
Okay.
F as in Frank.
Okay.
And so I'll ask you, Ms. King, there was testimony from the other side about you sending Ivy to dad with no shoes or no coat. Can you speak to that? And there was a video played, I think it was about 4 seconds, of you all exchanging at a gas station, holding Ivy, I guess, from you to him. Can you explain the no shoes or allegations about no coat?
I would say for that one, that takes a little bit of backstory. Simple fact that there were several instances prior to this where clothes would not get returned, clothes were said that they were thrown away, just a lot of issues over the clothes that she was being transferred in. Much like her play shoes, I got to the point to where, send her in play clothes, if that makes sense. And it just became problematic, when working with him in that way. But what ended up happening is at the gas station, it's from my car to him to his car. And at that point, she did transfer, like that, to avoid the issue of my things not being returned, him claiming that his things weren't returned. And she has the jacket, she has the shoes, but it was for the exchange purpose. And we both respectively had our own clothes and items for Ivy.
And is that a discussion that you and Mr. Maynard would have about her belongings being returned after visitation?
Yes, he would make all type of allegations about size, and Evie said she had problem with them, and just saying a lot of different things that for brand new shoes, brand new clothes, and things that it just seemed like it was a point of contention for him, to where I just kind of eliminate the problem. And it was never, to put Ivy in any way, anything like that, but just to make it to where it could alleviate the problem. She goes with him, she goes with me, she's taken care of.
Okay. So do you in fact have appropriate clothing, shoes, and coats for Ivy?
I would probably go to say Ivy probably has more clothes than me. Ivy has very appropriate clothing for all seasons. So many shoes. She's definitely taken care of in the clothing department.
I want to ask you, do you keep Mr. Maynard informed as it relates to Ivy's health and any medical appointments?
Yes, I've always kept him informed of those things. Yes, and she's on his medical insurance, so he would have the notification and the notice of that as well anyways.
Okay. And were there ever times that Mr. Maynard would express any discontent with how you were raising Ivy?
I can't recall anything directly as far as raising to me. He would send pictures about the clothes and different things that kind of seemed like kind of building, if that makes sense, evidence log. But I can't remember any direct conversations that he had to me about things, no.
When you said that he would send you texts about clothing, what are you referring to?
Some of the things that, like the shoes that you just showed and those kind of things, trying to I kind of refer to them as mugshots. It seemed like whenever she would go, he would, stand her and she'd take her pictures, and it was kind of unfortunate for her, to be having to experience that, but it was almost in an effort to kind of create a problem, if that makes sense, as far as what I was sending her in.
Okay. When you say whenever she would go, he would take her pictures, are you referring to whenever he would exercise parenting time with Ivy?
Yes, whenever she would go for her weekend visit, she would, have pictures taken of different things that, he wanted to try to make to be issues, if that makes sense.
I want to ask you about what I have pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 45. Okay. Is this a text exchange between you and Mr. Maynard where he is asking you about the minor child's underwear and her underwear size? Do you recall that?
Yes, I recall that.
Okay. And do you recall the time frame or the time frame of this text exchange?
This was recently, within the last couple of months.
Okay. Is it a fan accurate copy of the text exchange that Mr. Maynard sent you within the last couple of months about the minor child's underwear size?
Yes.
Okay. I move to tender into evidence Respondents Exhibit 45.
And the date of
45.
these messages?
I'm sorry.
Say that again.
What was the date of these messages? Sorry, I can't talk. The date.
Yes.
Ms. King said it was the last couple of months this year. Do you remember the month time frame, Ms. King?
I can check for you. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. But it was
This year.
Yes, within the past maybe 2 or 3 months of this year. Yes, ma'am.
All right, I'll allow it.
Thank you.
All right, so can you just explain to us the nature of the communications that Mr. Maynard would send you about the minor child's underwear or communications about her clothing size or underwear size?
I would say probably throughout time, he kind of sent things probably from the very beginning as he got her. Like I said, it was always some sort of picture, trying to almost, like I said, I guess document of some sort as opposed to, I guess, a conversation. But at this point, this is, of course, now we are in, the middle of things going on here. And, he's still saying that their, size is too small and things like that. And that issue was far resolved. So I can't say where he may have got them from or what was going on with that. But he was still claiming that there were issues with sizing and, things of that nature. And even stated that he takes pictures of Ivy. And I let him know that that's I hate to hear that, honestly. I can't imagine how uncomfortable that must be for her, to have to stand and take, pictures or, things like that in that nature. Just because you want to go and have fun. You want to go and be able to enjoy yourself and not be used for evidence, if that makes sense.
I want to ask you, is it correct that Mr. Maynard was also sending you texts like these prior to the divorce as well?
Yeah, these texts have been coming since he first got her. And that kind of goes to what he was initially saying, in his testimony, that from the very beginning, he was, looking to try to get custody of Ivy far before there was any actual concern. He just wanted to get her. So I do feel like that was where some of the pictures and photos and evidence came from.
I'm going to show you what I've pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 16. Okay, I'm showing you what has been pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 17, which is a text exchange in September of 2018 between you and Mr. Maynard. I'm just going to scroll down so you can identify it. You recognize this text exchange conversation from September of 2018 between you and Mr. Maynard?
I do, yes. That's one of the.
I'm sorry, go ahead. What'd you say?
I say yes, that's one of the ones that I'm referring to. Just small things as far as things behind or the little things that almost are laughable, but for years have been trying to.
Okay, hold on 1 second, because I just need you to identify so I can get it into evidence. But is this a fair and accurate copy of this text exchange between you and him in September of 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I move to tender into evidence Respondents Exhibit 17.
Respondent 17.
No objection.
So admitted.
Okay, so does this text exchange, the blue bubble, is that you and the blue bubble communicating and then Mr. Maynard and the gray bubble communicating?
That's correct.
Okay, so you started to explain that this was an example. What is this text exchange an example of?
Just what I'm saying, over the years, it's been pictures of very minor things that, kind of come through. I've never really understood where or why, but apparently somewhere, allegedly, if you zoom into that picture, there's dirt behind her ears. But it's always been just a little something, if that makes sense, trying to create or cause, like I'm doing something. And it's never been. Ivy's always been very well taken care of.
Okay. And then also it looks like here, one of the things he mentions in the text, he says, also, all the clothes you gave me are 6 to 12, including the outfit she is wearing. That's the size you told me to get. So I don't get how all the stuff I sent over there is too small. Did you all have communications like that back then prior to the divorce as well regarding the clothing size of Ivy?
Yes, and even that was kind of confusing because he never sent any clothes to me. He may have, if she was wearing an outfit, but yes, I guess that was another thing that he was trying to, present. But like I said, I sent her in the clothes that I would be okay with if she didn't come back in. And I've always kind of done it that way.
Okay, and what would be your typical response to Mr. Maynard when he would send you these texts with photos of Ivy or texts about her clothing or about her feet? What would be your response?
My message has always had the same thing. When Ivy comes to visit, spend your time with her, love on her, these minor things that you're trying to present, and spend time having her pose for, taking time away from her. These things you're trying to spend your time, going back and forth with me. It just makes far more sense to just spend the time, get her, love her, and, do that. That's what's important here, Ivy. Okay.
So after you all had this text exchange, this was September of 2018, the following year, you all entered that settlement agreement, finalizing a divorce, giving you primary custody. Is that right?
That's
okay. All right. I want to show you what's been pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 16. Is this a text exchange between you and Mr. Maynard in May of 2018 about a medical visit Ivy had?
Yes, that's correct.
Is this a fair and accurate copy of that text exchange?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay, I move to tender into evidence Respondents Exhibit 16.
Okay.
All right, 16,
No objection.
so amended.
Okay. So can you explain to the, all right, well, let me ask this first. Is this an example of you communicating and informing Mr. Maynard of what goes on with Ivy during her medical visits?
Absolutely. Yeah, this was one of the times that she actually got sick for some reason. And I was letting him know that it was that she was in the hospital and that I needed the proof of insurance. And I didn't have that from him. It's one of the things, the parenting plan that he's responsible for.
Okay. And it looks like Mr. Maynard was asking you what was the plan of action after Ivy left the medical appointment. Do you keep him up to date or up to speed on what needs to be done if there is ever an issue with her medically?
Yeah, if there's ever an issue, I definitely do let him know.
And Mr. Maynard, does
I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Maynard?
if you all can give me one quick second.
Okay, so Ms. King, how is Ivy's health overall?
Overall, never had any issues with her health. There have been a stomach bug or two, but I can't say any health conditions or anything that's persisted.
Your household and how your household operates. Can you explain to the court what a typical day, let's say if Ivy was in school, meaning that she wouldn't be on a holiday break or anything like that. If it's a typical school day, can you explain what Ivy's typical daily schedule would look like?
I wake her up at 6 in the morning to get ready for the school day. Her bus comes at around 6:30. She goes off to school, and I start my work from home day around 2:40ish. She gets off the bus and she comes in. She has her snack or a second lunch. Any homework that she needs to do, we start with, and then from there we pick an activity, coloring, painting, park, whatever it is that she wants to do for that day, and we do it from there. We talk, catch up on our day, and she loves to tell the stories of the classroom. And from there, it's dinner and bath, and we start all over again.
What is your typical work schedule?
I work from 9 to 5. I work from home 4 days out the week. I'm only in the office on Tuesday right now.
What do you do?
I'm a customer service representative for Siemens Industries.
And can you explain the relationship that Ivy has with Terrence? Terrence King, your partner.
She's very familiar with Terrence. They have a great relationship. She has known him, of course, since she was, before she was 1. So they're very close. They are very active. She loves going to the park, and they go do all the things, the running, the climbing. They have a great time. But she's very close with Terrence. And of course, still knowing who her dad is, but she's very close with him.
Okay. When you say she still knows who her dad is, do you, just based on what you observe of her and you parenting her every day, does she know who Terrence is as another adult in the household versus that is actually Mr. Maynard? Does she know that distinction?
Absolutely, yeah. She knows who her biological dad is. She knows who, how that relationship goes and how that works. She's very close with Terrence and enjoys spending time and talking to him, and they play and laugh and joke. She still knows who her dad is. And that was something that we always wanted to make sure of and never did attempt or try to neglect at all.
When you say you've never tried to neglect or attempt to not tell her who her dad is, have you always been supportive of Ivy having a relationship with Mr. Maynard as her father?
Absolutely. Like I said, I can remember, especially in the beginning, when she was first born, try to call, I send a million pictures, we have as much communication as possible to where at a certain point, I was even asking, would you like to get Ivy? Would you like to see her? Do you have time to visit with her, at this point? So of course, throughout the years, that's always been kept up, asking, if she wants to call or, helping her with her own device so she can be able to call. There are so many, different things that I've done to facilitate that and always encouraged her relationship with her dad.
Thank you. And Your Honor, before I continue, I see that the court reporter has logged in. It looks like Ms. Jolanda Price.
How you doing?
Hello.
I'm here.
And what's the defense attorney's position on that? Since there's a portion of that proceeding that would be missed.
What's my position? We're the respondents.
Not your position. I'm asking the opposing party's position.
Yes, Your Honor. We actually attempted to, well, we agreed to, like Ms. Barrie had previously said, agreed to have a court reporter here today. Okay. So we will share in the takedown so long as one's here.
Okay, we can participate in the takedown, but just, we just also need to be mindful that there are portions that are missing. You guys, maybe we'll get together and summarize what that portion might be. I'm not sure, but Ms. Price, go ahead and get set up. Actually, we're at lunch hour anyway, so we'll stop and then come back after the lunch hour. Because we're at 12:30. That was my stopping point. So we're a little bit past my stopping point anyway. So I'll see you guys back here at 1:30 and we'll finish at that time.
Before lunch break, we concluded with you describing Ayavi's relationship with your partner who also lives in the home, Mr. Terrence King. I want to ask you, does Ayavi have a support system on your side of the family?
Absolutely. She has my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents. She even still goes to see my mom and my grandmother. She definitely has a support system, family-wise and friend-wise, on my side.
Okay. And you were given testimony earlier as far as the relationship she has with Mr. King, Mr. Terrence King. As it relates to that, I think I just want to make it clear for the record, you do support Ayavi maintaining a relationship with her biological father, Mr. Maynard, correct?
That's always been something that's been supported. They have conversations about her dad. They talk about everything. It's always been something that's been known that who her dad is. Her dad is Adrian Maynard.
Okay. And as it relates to Mr. King, Mr. Terrence King, does he provide any assistance in the household as it relates to Ayavi?
He picks up if something is needed for sure. If she needs to get to an activity, if she needs to get picked up for some reason, where I can't, he will occasionally pick up for sure.
Okay. I want to show you what I have pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 12. Did you bring with you as evidence for the court to see photographs of Ayavi and family and friends as well as Mr. Terrence King as well?
Absolutely.
Okay, and these photographs that you brought, you took these photographs over the years?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I want to show you what I've pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 12. I'm going to scroll down and lay the foundation and before I ask you any questions about them. Can you see Respondents Exhibit 12 on your screen?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to scroll down and ask you, are these different photographs that you've taken showing your relationship and involvement with Ayavi over the years, including you, Mr. Terrence King, as well as family members?
Absolutely.
Okay. And these pictures are you're tendering these pictures to depict what is actually shown in the photographs. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Did you alter these in any way? Meaning, did you Photoshop them or alter them in any way?
No, ma'am.
Okay. I move to tender into evidence Respondents Exhibit 12.
No objection.
Okay, so it minutes.
Okay. So, Ms. King, I'm just gonna scroll through some of these photos. If you can describe.
Can you hear me? I think we mentioned this last time. The last name King was changed, but you're not married, or I can't recall essentially what was the issue on your last name?
I can't say issue. I got a legal name change a few years back.
Okay, but you're not married.
No, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to make sure that was what I recall from last time. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ms. King, I want to, if you can just describe briefly what we're looking at in each of the photos here.
It's me and Evie at a park. Outside somewhere as well. Her with Terrence's mother. Her and I. Her with my grandparents and my cousin and uncle. Her with Terrence at one of their mini park days. This actually all of us were here, but this was at a circus day. One of Evie and her many personalities. At her birthday party. At the daycare she used to attend. I think that might have been a first day of school type week. Yeah, one of our outings.
Okay. And in this photo, is Ayavi wearing a coat?
Yeah, she is. One of her mini coats she has. Another park day. We went out to lunch. Yep. Us hanging out in the room. Her and Terrence messing with the guitar. Another one of her birthday parties. She wanted to go to an arcade. The dinner after the birthday party. Yeah. One of their Halloweens. Terrence and Evie before they went out. Pumpkin patch. We all were there as well.
Okay. And looking at these photos, what do you recall the age of Ayavi in some of these photos?
I'd say between 2 and probably 3. Yeah, that was one of the Mother's Days. Yep, us at the park. Little baby Evie playing in the water at the bench. One of Terrence and Evie's park days when she was smaller.
Okay, do you recall how old she was in this picture, where she looks like she's wearing a bib, maybe, with this
That
ring
was
on?
that was a onesie and a little jean dress. She wasn't even one then.
Okay, and that's her picture with Mr. Terrence King there?
Yes. One of our zoo days. Yep, that was at the zoo as well. That's another one with her birthday cake. And this was from her first birthday. Yeah, that's one of her many outfits and pictures. Us out at the mall. In this picture, we went to go see the Disney princesses on ice. So we took some pictures before we did that, let her get her princess pictures.
Okay, so looking at these photos, are they illustrative of your relationship as well with your daughter?
Absolutely, very close. She is stuck to me like glue. She, loves to go out and have fun, and she loves hugging, and she likes her kisses. Yeah, that's my baby.
So there was testimony last time we were here about IAV using titles such as mommy versus heir or daddy, or calling, the step parents, like on Mr. Maynard's side, or even Mr. Terrence King in your home, using titles for everyone. Can you explain to the court the relationship IAV has as far as her use of parental titles?
Sure. I'll start with myself first. I can say that I wasn't a stickler on the mom thing initially. I just never really personally, I would call my aunts by their first name, and I had my parents' adults friends, and I always knew a respect level, and I always understood that Ivy understood the same thing. She always knew who I was and referred to me as her mother. So I knew there was no confusion there. From a very young age, as she was going back and forth, she let me know that I think one of the times she said she couldn't have two mommies. She already called Mr. Maynard's wife mommy, so she couldn't have two mommies. So she just kind of stuck with heir. And, there was no other children in the home for her to pick up mommy or, anything like that. As far as Terrence, she was around Terrence, when she was younger. And until her dad began regularly visiting, she was around Terrence. So while she initially, started trying to, that was something that he stopped early on, that she has a dad and, those kind of things. But it was never any force on our part for her to call him dad. And even now, she kind of goes back and forth between heir and ma, or, it just depends on how she's feeling that day kind of thing. But it's never been a stickler, forcing of titles. But she has said that, she'll get in trouble if she doesn't call his wife mommy on the other side. And that is the title that, that she prefers to be called by, in his household. But it's never been enforced by us.
Okay, so we have two he's that we're referring to. So I'm just going to ask some clarifying questions when you're saying him and he.
Okay.
So when you say it's never been a force by us to make her call someone something, who are you referring to?
Okay. So in my household, Terry King nor I have ever forced Ivy to call either of us by parental title. She's always known the respect level, known who we are. So she initially wanted to call Terrence dad, probably between 1 and 2. And Terrence let her know that, she has a biological dad, who was visiting and, starting to be more regularly in her life. And he wanted her to call her dad. So she stuck with calling Terrence. As far as in her dad's household, Mr. Maynard, became apparent as Evie started saying that she would get in trouble if she didn't call his wife or Mr. Maynard's wife mommy, and that she felt like she couldn't have two mommies. So she kind of stuck to calling me heir, because in her dad's home, it became apparent that mommy is what his wife wanted to be called, essentially.
Okay. But you don't force IAV to call Mr. Terrence dad over Mr. Maynard, correct?
Absolutely. No, that absolutely was never been forced. It actually was stopped.
You mentioned that when I asked you about your support system, you mentioned the different support systems that you have on your side of the family, including your grandparents. And then you went on to talk about IAV having a relationship with your parents as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, she still goes to visit with them and sees my grandmother and my mother, and she definitely does. My mother just came to her school, as a matter of fact, for a luncheon in the month of November. We go and see my grandmother often, and she still calls, and they just spoke a few days ago. So yeah, she still is able to have the relationship with my.
Sorry. And is it correct that Mr. Maynard also helps facilitate a relationship between your parents and IAV as well?
Yes, that's going back to probably 2018. They have always had a close relationship. Once my mom kind of got over things, with Aya's dad, she initially wasn't quite crazy about the divorce and did not like that. So she did take issue with some of the mistreatments that she saw as far as me. But after some time, he was able to start allowing Evie to visit with my parents on his weekends and those kind of things, as far as I understand. And they've sent pictures where Evie's been down there with her father, and my parents and grandmother and sister have gone down to visit. I picked Evie up from my mom's house or from my grandmother's house from a weekend from Mr. Maynard, if that makes sense. He would drop her off to my parents, and I would go to pick Evie up from there. So he's always, facilitated that relationship as well. But that goes back to the very beginning, and that's something I've always encouraged for sure.
I want to ask you a couple of things. You mentioned earlier, you mentioned the word homeschooling, and that at some point you were homeschooling Ivy. Is that correct?
I say that word, but of course she didn't start school until kindergarten at the end of the day. So when it comes down to it, I was teaching her how to read. I was teaching her, basic math skills. She learned how to read at 3 with me working with her regularly, as a matter of fact. So it was the more basic critical thinking, math, those kind of skills. But I can't say homeschooling because she didn't really start school until kindergarten.
Okay. As far as her school involvement, can you describe to the court the involvement you have in IAB's schooling?
Absolutely. I'm there very often. We just had a field trip I just went to. They're regularly bringing things to the teacher and to the students. I know most of the students by name. They know me by name. The kids are so sweet. She has such great kids in her class. I've always gone there and volunteered, and just I try to do as much as I can to be able to give that assistance to her teachers.
Does IAB receive awards?
Absolutely. Most of the programs, believe it or not, Ivy is on stage presenting and doing the things. And for one of her kindergarten presentations or, school honor awards, essentially, she was able to get awards for her testing as far as reading and math and being in the higher percentiles for that. And just being she was student of the month as well. Just between her academic and behavior, she has gotten many awards.
Okay. Did you bring a copy of those awards to show the court?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I want to show you what I pre-marked as respondents exhibit. A ribbon award.
An award of excellence. They didn't give out too many of those, but the select few top of the top got those, and Evie was one of them that was selected.
You mentioned that her father doesn't come to the school, or that Mr. Maynard doesn't come to the school for any of her activities. Do you know whether he's aware of them?
Yes, as I've seen his name, and I saw that he was able to log into her school app. She let me know that she asked and that he said that he would be at, some of the dances and school events, but, that didn't come through. And unfortunately, it means that Ivy can't have that support there because, she has people that'll go with her, to these things. Although, he'll promise and then sometimes it's a letdown kind of situation. But from school to karate to field trips, you name it. As far as his presence and involvement in those day-to-day activities, it's not there.
But you mentioned that you see Mr. Maynard log into the app for the school?
Yeah, so it's an app called Class Dojo. You can see the other parents' names on it. And even Ivy's teacher has he and I in a group message where any upcoming events, any school days, Spirit Week, whatever the case may be, he always puts that in the app. And I see that those messages are also, sent to Mr. Maynard.
And I think you testified, just to make sure I understand, you testified that Mr. Maynard did at least ask you to send photos, and you were able to send photos of the award ceremony?
Yes, ma'am. I did send photos of that award ceremony that year.
Okay. There was the allegation the last time we were here that you were not giving Mr. Maynard access to Ivy's daycares.
Okay.
Or that he didn't have access to any school items. What's your response to that?
I have to give the backstory that, of course, he did not move here until she was over 1 year old. By the time she was already enrolled in the daycare. So while his name was on the paperwork, I honestly didn't have an address to put down for it. She attended that school at several different locations. And at the end of the day, when he started coming around, he was getting her for the visitation and things. But at the time, I didn't have anything to put there. I didn't have his address or information, but he was always seeing her, and he was listed as her father on the paperwork, of course.
You mentioned that you did not have an address. Can you explain to the court the history of you and Mr. Maynard's communications regarding the exchanges of addresses?
It's been something that's kind of been, equal on both sides is the best way I can explain it. It's something that, he never gave me his address. And at the end of the day, it was never a question. He was seeing her at that time. And that dates back to the very beginning when he first moved here. And I guess didn't feel like he had an address at the end of the day. There's conversations where he said, she's safe with me. You don't need an address. It's different things over the years that it just became I know she's safe and he knows she's safe. And it was never an issue until the court case started coming. And when that's when it became a quote unquote issue.
Okay. So when has Mr. Maynard raised issues about addresses even prior to the divorce being finalized?
Yes, that was something that he was stated at the time. And of course, I even had, issues with it at that time when he took her and I couldn't get her. But at the end of the day, it's been something that it was not on either side is the best way I can explain it.
Okay. I want to show you a text exchange from December of 2018, what I've pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 19. I move to tender into evidence Respondents Exhibit 19.
I would object to this as to relevance. I believe this occurred prior to the parties' divorce.
Right. What's your position?
Yes, Judge. So the last time that we were here, there was testimony and allegations about Ms. King failing to provide an address, failing to give information about the child's schooling. And I believe that served as one of the factual bases for his request for a change of custody. Mm-hmm. And so what I am attempting to establish to the court is that the condition existed even prior to, or the discord and the exchange about addresses existed prior to the divorce decree. And I'll also present text that shows it existed even after. So this is just an attempt to show the court that the condition of the parties as it relates to the co-parenting and exchange of addresses prior to the divorce. And then I'll show the condition after.
Okay. Overall.
So is it tendered into evidence, Your Honor? I'm sorry for the record.
Yes.
Okay. So Ms. King, looking at this text exchange in December of 2018 between you and Mr. Maynard, can you explain to the court the nature of you all's communication regarding addresses and exchanging addresses?
Yes. And this was actually the instance where he kept her for close to that month, essentially. He asked for her a few days early that he had a break and he wanted to get her for a few days. And that kind of is where I was saying we had a verbal visitation agreement at that time. He would say he was available and I would make a way for her to be able to visit with him. At this time, I let him know that from the last visits, I had some, issues there as far as her going. And he then agreed to, those conditions and being able to take care of her and to correct the concerns that I had essentially about Ivy being in his care and her dad's care. So with that, I brought her to him and we met at a restaurant in Stone Mountain. I gave Ivy, we exchanged her at the restaurant there. And from there was an altercation where he just would not bring her back. I tried to give several different meeting places, tried to reason with him. And at that point, he claimed that he gave me his home address, but he never did. He never had it. And that's why, when he took her, had her for that time, I had an issue with smelling of marijuana when I dropped her off. I let him know, hey, can you not smoke around her? He decided that he wanted to call the police and call law enforcement at that time. Of course, called and cursed me out in front of Ivy at this time. He's very, volatile as far as that goes. And then from there, he went on to decide to just not return her from that visitation. And that's where I had to get the emergency injunction to get the parenting plan in place. The temporary.
Okay, so during this text exchange, when you and Mr. Maynard were discussing addresses, he says here, you forced me to give you my home address. And then you also talk about the address that he needed. What was the nature of you all's communications regarding those addresses?
He claimed that he needed my home address. However, I definitely didn't have his because he never provided a unit number, which is why I couldn't find her. So he never gave me his. And at that time, I hadn't given him mine. But it was something that was from the very beginning. And even then, he was always trying to go through the courts, serve papers. It was always an attempt for litigation, essentially, and some sort of custody arrangement for sure.
Okay. And more recently, and did you all have a discussion about addresses again in 2021?
Just as he was filing this motion, yes, he asked for the address to be able to send the papers and those kind of things. He goes through that probably once a year or so where he decides he's ready to try to file papers. And that was the most recent time.
Okay. I'm going to show you what I've pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 22. Did you alter this document in any way?
I did not.
Okay, I move to tender into evidence Respondents Exhibit 22.
Respondents 22, what's your position?
No objection.
All right.
Um,
So it
so
is.
Ms. King, I'll ask you, I'm looking at this text exchange dated September 24th, 2021. Is this his communication in the gray and your communication in the blue?
Yes.
Okay, so what happened here during you all's communication?
This is after the COVID incident. This is where he's stating that he wants to file a motion, that he's going to file for contempt, that kind of thing. And this is actually the first time that I was provided a full address from him the entire time. And from here is just where I provided, the address that I was in transition with.
Okay, so September 24th of 2021, you're saying it's the first time that you received Mr. Maynard's full address that included his unit number?
Correct, because initially he provided the street address, but he didn't provide the unit number, which is why when he had her, I never could find her or go visit or anything like that. He never did provide the full address.
And how long did you go without being able to see Ivy when he kept her?
3.5 weeks.
Does Ivy have any interests?
Yes, Ivy has many interests. She's one of those kids who always sees and watches the Disney Channel. And that's always been one of the things that she says. She wants to be on TV. She wants to be on stage. She loves the performance. That's why those school programs are so great for her. She started with a casting agency, and I actually sent those papers to her father. He never did sign them. As a matter of fact, he stated that he would not do anything until he could go to his lawyers or I guess get legal advice on it. But so right now, to this date, and that was probably maybe a year or two ago, he still has never signed or supported in her acting, has never allowed her or agreed to a passport. She had acting opportunities out of the country. It just has never been a support thing for the things that she's interested in.
Okay. And so you mentioned that she's interested in acting and there were opportunities out of the country. How long ago was it that you had these conversations with Mr. Maynard?
I remember these conversations being around the same time as her starting kindergarten. So it would be somewhere in August of, her year for kindergarten, or August or September, sometime in there. But I just remember it being, because the conversations were kind of grouped together with her starting choice preparatory, which actually was going to be perfect for her budding acting career, because it was that hybrid model where she wouldn't miss any, schoolwork, but would still be able to pursue her interests.
Is Ivy taking singing lessons, or has she taken singing lessons before?
Yeah, that was another thing that she was doing, singing lessons. She's taking dance lessons.
I'm sorry, hold on one quick second.
So, Ms. King, you were describing Ivy's involvement in singing lessons.
Yeah, whatever it is that she comes up with that week, that month is what we try to put her in. She likes to sing, we put her in singing. She says she wants to try something else, we put her in dancing. She wants to try karate, we put her in karate. You want to do acting or modeling, whatever it is that she comes up with or asks for, whatever phase she's in, we try to let her support and, foster that essentially so she can see what it is that she wants to do. It was rock climbing for a while. We've done it all.
And would you inform her father of those interests?
I would. And that's where I say, the support wasn't there for those things. And that's where some of the things had to stop. Ultimately, she can't act right now because he never provided his consent for it. Ultimately, she can't be able to do the things that she's interested in because of that.
When you say that Mr. Maynard never provided his consent, was there documentation that he would have had to sign?
Yes, there would have been. There was consent forms, and even especially her passport. Both parents have to, sign for the passport. He refused to sign for the passport, and he, I guess, he just kept coming up with different excuses as to why he wasn't going to be able to sign the paperwork for her acting or for her agency, because that's what it was, trying to get her with the agency.
I want to ask you about your co-parenting with Mr. Maynard. Do you believe that Mr. Maynard, if custody were to change to him, that he would be the parent that would be willing to co-parent with you?
He hasn't proven that from the opportunities that he has. As far as information that's shared with me, I don't get pictures or videos. I don't get discussions. I don't get information as far as I recently found out through his, last statement that he's changed religions. I was never made aware of, these different things. Him keeping her, for that time. There are just many things that show that while he may ask for the things, he doesn't give them himself. So I can't see anywhere where he communicates or volunteers any information about his parenting with Ivy. He requests them, but he doesn't give them.
What was the religion change?
He was atheist, and then he converted to Muslim. I guess he said in his last one that was a more recent change, but he did not.
Where's Mr. Maynard? I just opened back up the
Video is off.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I stepped away to use the restroom. I asked Miss Marshall.
Okay, next time you need to wait until you get a response, okay?
She told me that it was okay, Your Honor, in the direct message. I'm sorry.
All right, thank you. All right, go ahead.
So he actually was atheist and then he converted to Muslim, I guess recently per his testimony. But I was never made aware of that change. Ivy, after some time, mentioned, from there that she started going to mosque and is now wearing the hijab. But he never made me aware of those changes at all. I never knew he got married. I never knew about his household changes. None of the information that he's saying he's not giving it to me. It's my point.
You didn't know he was married?
No, he did not notify me that he got married. I didn't know that he was living with someone. I knew that he was dating her, but I did not know that he got married and that they, were living together in that sense. I did not.
When did you find out? Let me take it topic by topic. When did you find out he had remarried?
I found out that he remarried from him and his testimony. Honestly, I never really knew. I at some point, came to figure out that she was living there, but I never was made aware that, he was married or, what the household living arrangement was.
So you knew of an existence of his wife, but never knew that they were actually married?
Yeah, we were friendly in El Paso. Me and his current wife, actually went out a few times and, we spoke. We were friendly. And I guess in Ivy's dad or Adrian and I's separation, I guess he and Alexa at some point started dating. But when he came back to Georgia, he didn't, make me aware that she would be living there. When he came back to Georgia, he didn't make me aware that, her son, would be sharing, the house as well. I didn't know these things directly from him. Some of the things, I heard of from Evie, but I wasn't told these things.
And you mentioned that you did not know his religion had changed, that he was previously an atheist, and you learned that now that has changed. When did you learn of that change?
I officially learned of it through his testimony, honestly. I had heard certain things of Evie saying, certain things you can kind of pick up on and kind of put together, asking certain questions as far as the Quran or just certain things, her knowing, oh, that's a hijab and, those kind of things. But no, I definitely will say that I didn't know about the religion, change. And it kind of saddened me to some extent just because we're splitting holiday time with a person who doesn't celebrate the same holidays that I do as a Christian. So it's one of those things that, I did not know of at all and really wish I would have been made aware for sure.
Do you know if Ivy has been going to the mosque or any, I guess, institutions where Muslims practice? Do you know?
He stated that Ivy has mentioned a couple of things. I can't say how often or how frequent, but she said, things about the mosque or, praying times or, those kind of things, just bits and pieces here and there. But, he did state that whoever wants to go, can go kind of thing. But, I definitely did not hear directly from him. And of course, her position to me is that she doesn't really want to go at the end of the day.
You said you heard him state that. Are you saying the last time we were in court, he was testifying to that?
That's correct. The last time we were in court, he was testifying to the fact that he'll get off and, be able to invite anyone who wants to go to mosque to go to mosque.
Okay. With you all sharing joint legal custody and you having final decision making on religious upbringing, is that an area that you would have loved to have had a discussion with Mr. Maynard about prior to him making that decision?
I mean, for sure. I mean, while I would love for her to be exposed to certain things, I think it's the communication part. And I definitely wasn't aware. And especially because I'm Christian. So the holidays that, she was raised to celebrate, she now no longer can, in that same way with her dad. So it would have been better for me to be able to have a discussion with her, at least to be able to explain certain things to where it's not confused on certain things. Thanksgiving just passed. And that was one of those, like, she couldn't do the Thanksgiving dinner kind of thing. It's just the little things. Next year, it'll be Christmas. And of course, with this being such a recent thing, it hasn't been very long from what I understand. It's going to take some adjustment for her to get used to at her dad's, with this religion change.
You mentioned communication. How's the communication between you and Mr. Maynard as it relates to Ivy?
It's limited. Like I said, he doesn't give, but he asks for much. He doesn't share anything outside of the pictures of the things. He doesn't share any updates. He doesn't share anything outside really of the accusations and allegations that he has as far as neglect. And of course, that's been since the beginning and never really has changed. It's not very much good communication about Ivy did this or, that kind of thing.
Have you ever had concerns about Mr. Maynard's behavior or anger towards you in communicating with Ivy?
I would definitely say yes. That was a big part of why I left at 6 weeks pregnant, honestly. I come from a 2-parent household. We were married. I never really did see divorce in my future. But when I started becoming scared, honestly, and very concerned for my own safety and subsequently Evie's safety. That's when I decided that it was time to go at the end of the day. So it has not changed. It has continued to be very, very volatile. In front of Ivy with me directly, it doesn't make a difference. When his anger blows up, it blows up with me, and it's starting to spill to Evie as well.
Okay. I want to unpack a lot of what you said. You said it starts to spill over to Ivy. What do you mean by that?
Not just with him telling her, things about me, about Terrence, just mentioning and talking very poorly about me as a parent, honestly. And from what Ivy has said, both he and his wife, regularly do. And that's something that's very unfortunate. And she's talked about how she, has to, it's kind of a guilt thing. Like it's not a great situation, her having to defend her own mother. From him being physically abusive with her, he left a bruise on her arm recently. It's just not a good situation. And it seems like his anger is only escalating at this point.
When you say he left a bruise on Ivy recently, when was that?
I believe that was that? I know it was recent. It's been some time.
Was it in July of 2023 this year?
Yes, I know it was right around the time of our last date.
Did you take photos of it?
I took photos of it, and I actually took video of what Evie said happened. But from what I understand, she was speaking too low, and he grabbed her
Your
by
Honor,
her.
I'm going to object us to hearsay to anything the child said.
Yeah, response.
As it relates, so at this point in the testimony, Judge, I would redirect the client, or I will redirect Ms. King because it is being offered for the truth of the matter. So I'll redirect her as far as her testimony. But as it relates to, well, I guess I'll just stop there and wait till further testimony. But if I can just redirect Ms. King.
Okay, yes.
Okay. So Ms. King, as it relates, so my question was, did you take photos of the bruises? That was my question. Okay.
I submitted them on the police report that I subsequently was advised by the doctors to file. After taking the doctor, she was looked at and it was advised to go to the police and be able to go ahead and get it documented.
Okay, I want to show you what I pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 43. Can you see, let me show the first page. Can you see Respondents Exhibit 43 on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just going to scroll down. Is this fair and accurate copies of the photograph that you took of Ivy in July of 2023?
Yeah, that's the very next day after she got back. And it just broke my heart to see those marks on her like that. And for her to explain what happened, she was so sad about it and hurt. It breaks my heart to see it starting to spill to her as well.
Okay, I move to tender into evidence Respondents Exhibit 43.
Respondents 43.
No objection.
What's your position?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, so a minute.
Does this, do you have concerns about the corporal punishment that Mr. Maynard uses with Ivy?
I do, and this is just one example of it. And this actually kind of started with giving me concerns just because this was the next day after she came back. The Sunday that I got her, she was in long sleeve. And it honestly made me wonder what else has been going on. So I'm seeing her come back in long sleeves in the middle of July and covering up the bruises. And it truly does make me question what else is going on over there, because I know what made me leave. And I know what I, had to deal with verbally from him and where it started to go. And I just really don't want that for her.
Have you spoken with Mr. Maynard, expressing any of these concerns with him?
Yes, it's all been denied. It's never been, corrected or changed in any way. That's why I just went to just make sure that it was at least documented to where there's, it's just known, because I don't see it changing.
Okay, when you say it's documented, what are you referring to?
I had to file a police report. I wanted to, make sure that she was going to be safe, going forward. And when I took her to the doctors and they confirmed that looks like, the kind of bruising that would come with, being grabbed roughly by the arm, yanked up, and, those kind of things. They advised me to file a police report and to make sure that the authorities are aware of what's going on.
Did you bring a copy of that incident report?
I did.
Okay, I'm going to show you what's been pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 44. Is this a copy of the police report?
Yes, it is.
Okay, did you doctor this or alter it in any way from its original form?
I did not.
Okay, I move to tender into evidence Respondents Exhibit 44.
I would object, Your Honor. This is not a certified copy of a police report. It only states an offense report, and it doesn't even contain a narrative.
Okay, and Judge, the evidence rules changed years ago. A certified copy of a police report is not required for it to be admissible. This is a public record, and police reports as public records are admissible. And it is it is an exception to the hearsay rule. As it relates to the objection that it's not a narrative, I'm not quite sure what the legal objection is there, but certainly there is verbiage on this document which constitutes admissible hearsay because it is an exception pursuant to the evidence rules. So to that extent, I would ask that the court allows this entry of Respondents Exhibit 44.
Okay, I would allow 44. Actually, I think it without being the narrative, that's actually what makes it more admissible, because with the narrative, you have the hearsay involved in the narrative. All you really need on the police report is to show that there was a call made, because if you write down what the police is saying, then that kind of gives you double hearsay. So I'm going to allow it for the purpose of showing that that call was made.
All right, and so Ms. King, did you have a conversation with Mr. Maynard thereafter by phone expressing your concerns?
The conversation that was had, he kind of tried to group it in with another altercation where he was cursing me out and yelling and screaming when he actually had IEV, where he was trying to state that, I'm trying to make it look like something, and just basically denying what's going on, basically. And even after, speaking to the officer, he said the same thing, that he's not willing to correct or change, just denying what happened.
How do your communications with Mr. Maynard, can you describe the nature of how your communications with Mr. Maynard typically are when you're trying to discuss matters with him over the phone?
Yeah, there's a reason why for most things I try to stick to text message, because he tries to, look a little better over text, if that makes sense. But when it comes to the phone calls, Adrian often is cursing, is yelling, lots of profanity, lots of threats. It doesn't, I can hear Evie in the background at times. Sometimes he'll pass the phone to Evie, which, shows that she's right there. It's just not a good situation from him speaking to me poorly, speaking about me poorly directly in Ivy's presence. It gets out of control. It's very scary at times.
So I'm sorry, what was that last bit?
I said it's very scary at times.
Okay. I'll ask you, did you have an opportunity to record Mr. Maynard's one of the communications that Mr. Maynard had with you?
Yes, I expressed my concerns over the photos that he was taking. Like I was saying, I feel like, Ivy's time with him should be spent playing and having fun, not posing for pictures to, try to use as court document. He flew off the handle and was throwing threats and, cursing and yelling, continued to call back throughout the day. It was a terrible situation.
Okay. Was that recording, did you record that in September of 2023?
I did.
Okay. And what did you use to record?
Another tablet, another device.
Okay. And that device that you used to record, did you bring a copy of that recording here today to play for the court?
Did.
Okay. Did you alter or doctor that recording in any way?
I did not.
Okay. I would like to offer into evidence and display or publish what has been pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 42, which is the recording between the parties in September of 2023, as identified by the witness.
Ms. Alexander? Any objections?
I'm sorry, my microphone would not mute. No, Your Honor.
All right, you may proceed.
Hello?
Ariel,
Yes?
don't ever come at me with no goofy shit like that again in your life. I'm not stunning the courts or none of that. While you done had a nigga damn near your daddy age, you been playing a third wheel to a nigga your daddy age with violent crimes on his record. Don't come at me talking about having my daughter taking pictures in underwear. I take pictures of her underwear while they're off. Whatever kind of goofy shit y'all got going over there, y'all keep it over there. Don't project that shit onto me. I'm not studying none of the other shit, Ariel. Don't play with me like that. That's what brought us to this position in the first place. You talking good shit to me about my daughter. And over that in the background, we can take it, we can take it. Don't try me on no nut shit like that again.
Adrian, this is the kind of behavior that makes me afraid to deal with you. This is the kind of behavior that makes me concerned about This is the kind of behavior that has me concerned about dealing with you. This is the type of harassment. This is the type of harassment.
About women with genitals and all type of other shit.
This is the
Nigga who think he's the Messiah to get his shit together before you talk to me like that. And if you're so scared of me, then stop pulling up by yourself. Nothing about how you address me, nothing about how you treat my child shows that you're afraid of me.
I would like for you to stop speaking to me like this. This is not conducive to a co-parenting relationship. This is not conducive to a co-parenting relationship. I need you to speak to me with respect. I need you to stop threatening my family.
Pretending for the court for once in your life. For once in your life.
I am very concerned. I'm gonna have to report this. I don't feel comfortable continuing this conversation. I'm gonna have to go now. I'd like to speak to Ivy later. I need to make sure this isn't affecting her, but I can't speak to you any further. I really hate this. I'm afraid. I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. I'm afraid.
Okay. So Ms. King, and first and foremost, did you end that call where what we just heard? Did you end the call after that?
Yeah, I couldn't take any more. I had to hang up.
Okay. You mentioned in there, I would like to talk to Ivy later. Was Ivy in Mr. Maynard's physical custody during that call?
Yeah, she was there. She heard all of that. I mean, there's no way to conceal that kind of yelling and anger in a small home. That she was there. She heard it.
Karen, I'm going to object because to cause speculation. She does not know where the child was at that time.
Sustained.
Okay, as far as where the child physically was at the time, you at least know that she was with her dad for his visitation.
I spoke to her 15 minutes after this phone call, and she was there in the house. She didn't say that she had just got back. I spoke to her. He called back with her and then proceeded to further curse me out with her being in the room. I could hear her in the room with him after she just got off the phone with me. And while she started the conversation, he took the phone from her and proceeded to continue cursing me out. And that was not even 15 minutes after this. She was home at this time.
Okay. And that was after this recording of the call that we just listened to?
Correct. Probably 10, 15 minutes after that, he called back with Ivy. She started the conversation and then he took it and proceeded to continue cursing me out. And I could hear her in the background.
What led to this phone call taking place? Because you mentioned that you usually like to keep things via text. What led to this phone call?
I let him know that I was concerned about him taking pictures. Like I said, I really feel like the time should be spent having fun, not taking pictures for evidence, not mugshot type pictures. And it happens so regularly and so frequently. I just was bringing my concern again. Please stop taking pictures of our daughter. He took it in a complete different way than what I meant and completely went off the rails. And that's not the first time. It won't be the last time. It's exactly how he has operated on a regular basis with me for years. And that's how he called me.
Okay. I'm going to show you what was already entered into evidence as Respondents Exhibit 45. You see that on your screen?
Yes, this is when I first started texting him about it.
Okay. So this text exchange, is this the text exchange that you and Mr. Maynard had before that phone call?
Yes, this is when I let him know when I let Adrian know that I was concerned about him taking pictures of Ivy.
Okay. So looking at this text, this is where Mr. Maynard says that Ivy continues to wear 4T underwear, even though she's a size 6. And he goes on to talk about it presumably causes her discomfort. And then he asked about purchasing, more clothing. In your response there, can you explain to the court what you expressed to Mr. Maynard?
I let him know that, if he wants to get her some extras, he can, but I have no idea where those came from. I regularly do her laundry. I regularly purchase her clothes. I'm not quite sure where she got that from. I don't know I don't get it. I don't know, but it always comes with something. And I really just assumed this was just another one of those somethings that he tried to come up with.
Okay. And then he replied that he has pictures and he would take your word for it. And then how did you respond thereafter?
That I really hope that him taking pictures of her doesn't cause her trauma and discomfort. As a young girl, taking pictures can be traumatic. And that truly was, when I say the trauma of it, standing there and continuing to be criticized and picked over in every little detail. It's not a fun picture. We're not out having fun. I can only imagine the conversation that's going on surrounding it. But she would know that she's having a picture taken of her because something is quote unquote wrong. And at the end of the day, this wasn't the first time. It wasn't the last time. And I really was just letting him know I'm concerned about it. I really wanted to stop.
Okay. And then also in this text, I see that you mentioned, you said even going as far as you picking her up by her arm and dropping her, causing bruising the other week. Was that in relation to the photos that we saw earlier?
And his response, a lie, shows exactly what I'm saying. That's always been denied. There are photos. Usually he's gone to the doctor. He's never once said, I did it. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. It's never been that. Evie hasn't said there's any been conversation about it. It's just always been denied, which to me is why I'm concerned that it will continue.
Okay. And so after you all had this text exchange, is that when Mr. Maynard called you?
Yeah, he called at that point and immediately went into the version of Adrian that I'm most familiar with.
Okay. Is that the recording we just listened to?
Correct, with the cursing, the threatening, the disparaging comments.
So how do you best try to navigate the communications as far as allowing Mr. Maynard to still have his phone time with Ivy? What have you done?
Well, because when he calls my phone, it generally turns out this way. I've always provided her with a device that she could be contacted on directly, whether it's a tablet or an iPad or whatever it may be. I've always provided her her own device to where he doesn't have to get upset with me for nothing, to where he can just talk to Ivy, be able to love on her, talk to her, that kind of thing.
Do you believe that there's been some coaching by Mr. Maynard as it relates to Ivy in this case?
Absolutely. I mean, I have.
Yeah, and I'm going to object to cause for speculation, and she's not privy to the conversation. She can't testify to it.
Well, so one, in response, Judge, there was testimony the last time we were here from our guardian that is why part of that, as far as what mom shared with the guardian, is why the guardian recommended that Ivy sees Dr. Levy. You may recall she was a brief witness who came the last time we were here. She just did like a 45-minute interview of the minor child. And so she testified. I was able to cross-examine her as well, and she was able to report back to the guardian. And so this line of questioning by mom is firsthand knowledge that mom has. It's not speculation, it's firsthand knowledge, because that's what precipitated the guardian recommended that Dr. Levy talks to Ivy.
Let me hear the response. I'll consider it conditionally. Let me hear what the response is.
I still don't understand the firsthand knowledge of what, if it is the contents of the.
That's what I'm trying to figure out what her, Crawford, tell me what you think her response is to that question.
So if allowed to continue, my question was, does she believe that Mr. Maynard coaches the minor child? Her response was yes. And I was going to ask, why does she believe that, or how did she come to that conclusion? I anticipate that she will testify that just based on communications with the minor child, which led to the guardian then recommended to the court that Dr. Levy.
I'm going to sustain the objection. You can make those arguments based on what you already have on the record.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. And Ms. King, as it relates to, I want to ask you about Dr. Levy, because you were here when she testified, correct?
Yes.
And there, Dr. Levy, she testified that she met with Ivy. How many times did she meet with Ivy?
For my first intake visit, but she didn't speak with her then. She just met her, in the waiting room. I thought that was for Ivy and I. So that was her first time seeing Ivy. And then she actually sat down and met and talked with Ivy for about 45 minutes one time.
And after she met and sat down and talked with Ivy during those 45 minutes, did she meet with you and follow up with you after that visit?
No, I never heard back from her.
Okay, so did she ask you any questions about anything that Ivy may have said during that meeting?
No.
Okay, when you say you haven't heard back from her, was the court appearance the next time that you heard anything else from Dr. Levy?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and has Dr. Levy ever met with Ivy in your home?
No, Dr. Levy has never met with Ivy in my home.
Okay. And just to be clear, I believe her testimony the last time she was here, and I just want to get confirmation with you that Dr. Levy hasn't met with Ivy anywhere else outside of her office. Is that correct?
That's correct.
There's the allegation that there's the allegation from Mr. Maynard the last time we were here that Ivy has suffered emotionally, or there's some harm that Ivy has faced because of Melody leaving. What's your response to that? And Melody being your other partner that you testified about earlier. What's your response to that allegation?
That comes as a huge shock to me. Ivy and I talk often, and Melody left on good terms at the end of the day. Ivy, if she'd like to see her, she still can, but she's never expressed any emotional distress about it outside of just a memory that may have occurred. She's never really brought it back up or, even, spoken about it in that way. So I definitely can't see any emotional distress regarding it, because outside of, oh, I remember when, quote unquote, type thing happens outside of memory, looking back kind of things. She doesn't bring it up with any sadness. She doesn't bring it up with any, emotional turmoil at all.
And even after your relationship ended with Melody, and she was no longer in the home, has Ivy continued to thrive thereafter in her schooling?
Absolutely. That's where, as she continued in school and started getting those awards, and those that all came after that didn't make any change to her academically, emotionally, any of that.
Has Mr. Maynard, to your knowledge, ever met your partner, Mr. Terrence King?
No, he refuses to meet him.
And I heard in that conversation, that recording that we listened to, one of the things that I heard Mr. Maynard say was, F, you're a family, and F that N-word. Was that correct as far as what he said to you?
That's correct, and that's not the first time.
Okay. And was that in reference to Mr. Terrence King?
Yes, that was in reference to Terrence.
How old is Terrence?
Terrence is 46.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. And how old are you?
I'm 30.
All right, thank you.
And what does Terrence do for a living?
Terrence is a photographer, videographer.
And I know we went over this last time because I do remember there being some accusations about his criminal history, but I think your position was he did not have one, or but anyway, can you refresh my recollection on what that was? I'll review my notes in the proceeding as well, but just refresh my recollection.
So Ms. King, yes. So I'll ask you, as the court mentioned, what can you tell us about the criminal history of Mr. Terrence King as it was brought up?
So as I mentioned, Terrence is 46. The criminal, I guess, record that they're referring to is stuff from 20 plus years ago. At the end of the day, that was as a young man making decisions that he has made much better decisions since then. He's now a photographer, videographer, an ordained pastor, mentors children. It's a complete difference. And the things that, were supposedly brought to light were things from literally 20 years ago.
Yeah, what were they?
Several charges that they tried to mention or bring up. Nothing that I believe assault. I can't recall right off because it's so long ago. I can't recall.
What was it? I
think one may have been assault. I said it's so long ago, and it was far before I met him that I really don't recall right off. That would be something that he would be better able to speak to. I really don't know right off if that makes
you're in a relationship with somebody that has a criminal history and you don't know what it is.
I know he has a criminal past. As far as I know, he was never convicted of anything, and as far as I understand who he is, what he does now.
History if you're not convicted.
Like I can't speak to the details, Your Honor. I'm sorry. I can't say that I recall the specifics of it. What I know of it, I don't know the exact names.
If you have a murder, child molestation, rape, you would know.
Definitely anything sexual by any means. That I can say that's always checked out. I have a daughter, so that's always going to be one of the first things that's checked out. I think it's something to do with assault, but like I said, I can't recall the exact title of it.
Your Honor, if I may clarify for the record, the testimony that Mr. Maynard elicited was that he learned that it was aggravated assault and attempted murder.
All right, thanks. You didn't know that it was attempted murder, Ms. King?
I did not. So
that's new to you?
I could say it's new to me, but I could say it's so long ago that doesn't reflect the person that I know today.
And so just for clarity, Ms. King, you were aware of this information before this trial started, correct?
Well, I knew he had I knew that he had some interactions or, situations with the law, if that makes sense, but I didn't know the details because it wasn't reflective of who he is today.
And so as it relates to you mentioned one of the things I asked my last question prior to the court's question was what did Mr. King do for a living? You mentioned he was a photographer and a videographer.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, for the court reporter?
Yes.
Okay. You also mentioned that he's an ordained pastor.
Yes, he's been for the last 6 years now.
Okay. You also testified that he works with kids. Tell us about that.
He mentors children from the city that he's from. People oftentimes used to, let him come in and help with talking to them and getting through to them, troubled teens kind of thing. He's always mentored, helped, guided, both spiritually, just has always worked with children.
And just to clarify for the record, I just want to make sure my notes are correct. You mentioned that you started dating Mr. Terrence King November of 2017?
Yes.
Okay. And that you all started living together in 2018. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And did Mr. Maynard know about Mr. Terrence King at that time?
Yeah, so it was conversations that we had, and he even referred to it in the messages. He definitely knew about him.
Okay, was those the text messages that we looked at earlier? Right.
Yes.
There was an allegation about Mr. Terrence King making Ivy not wear socks. Do you have any knowledge regarding that?
That's never been a thing that I've ever seen or witnessed or know to be true at all. I don't wear socks, so I'm not sure if Ebby picked that up from me, but it's never been anything regarding punishment or any force from either of us. As a matter of fact, when it comes to it, Terrence wears socks, so he definitely wouldn't be forcing her by any means to not wear them.
The claim of contempt.
Okay.
So you were here during the first couple of days of trial where Mr. Maynard, I was exploring his contempt allegations, and one of the contempts he mentioned was surrounding COVID. Do you recall that?
I do.
Okay. So in 2000, well, excuse me, let me ask it this way. Can you explain to the court what happened during the time that you all had a back and forth about visitation during COVID?
Yes, that was one of the things that he let me know. She had gone over for a weekend visitation. He let me know that after she returned, I believe it was that next day, he let me know that his stepson in the home got COVID. This is Adrian. Adrian let me know that his stepson in the home got COVID. From there, we spoke about quarantining. We agreed to that, and I asked for negative COVID tests, essentially. With that, he said, from what I understood, was in the positive of he would be providing, negative COVID tests. But subsequently, like, he never did. At the end of the day, he never came back and said anything about verbally. Did he say that, COVID was clear from the home? He never did send any negative tests from anyone in the family, and showed back up the next visit, although I was still unsure as to what's going on. It's a very serious thing to me, and I didn't really want to take any chances.
Okay, so to be clear, you're saying that he never provided you with a negative test result to show that his son was no longer had COVID.
He didn't provide me with a negative test result, nor did he provide me even verbally, even over text, saying he no longer has COVID. I never knew anything. He said that he had it, and from there, Adrian never said anything about it being gone or the health risk being gone.
So at what point did the parenting time resume?
The parenting time resumed not that next weekend, and then not the weekend after that, but then directly after it resumed.
Okay. And how did that come about?
He let me know that they no longer had it. And at that point, I felt comfortable, with her returning. Adrian let me know that no one in his home no longer had COVID. So I felt comfortable with letting Ivy return.
Was there a text exchange that you brought for the court to see where Mr. Maynard was informing you about COVID?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I'm going to show you what I pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 23. Do you see Respondents Exhibit 23 on your screen?
I did.
Okay, is this a January 2022 text exchange between you and Mr. Maynard regarding COVID?
Yes, that's another one. That's another incident.
Okay. So, Ms. King, you mentioned that this was another instance of COVID. What happened in January of 2022?
He let me know that Alexa had tested positive and Ivy was negative. So he said that he would be staying home. And although he offered to keep Ivy to let her quarantine there because no one in my household had it, I felt like it was going to be better for her to be able to quarantine here just in case. So I let him know that I'll be there to pick her up.
Okay, so Alexa is his wife, is that correct?
That's what I recently found out, yes.
Okay. All right. So during this period of time, when he mentioned to you that his wife had COVID, you all worked it out to where Ivy could quarantine where you were because she tested negative?
Correct.
Okay. All right. I want to ask you, you mentioned, just so the court is clear, the contempt that he raised, let me stop sharing. The contempt that Mr. Maynard raised as far as the COVID incident with his son being ill, was that in 2021?
Yes, so that was right before the case was filed. And I guess he thought he had the golden ticket and that this was the time that he could go ahead and file. And that was the first thing that he said from the very first visitation. I'm going to file paper. You did it now, basically, and I'm going to serve you with contempt.
Did he ever ask for any makeup time during the time that his son had COVID?
No, I actually offered and he said that he didn't want makeup time. He wanted custody. He wasn't amicable to it in the conversations with one of his other lawyers that he had at the very beginning of this.
There's also the allegation from Mr. Maynard that you denied parenting time for fall break. Can you explain to the court what happened during fall break of 2022?
So fall break of 2022, IOV was attending Choice Preparatory. Choice Preparatory has its own calendar, but DeKalb County also has a calendar, a school calendar. Both calendars made reference to fall break. Choice Preparatory's was a week. DeKalb County's was maybe 3 days, but both of them stated fall break. It was, I believe, an even year. Can't recall which year. I think it was an even year, so it was my fall break. So I exercised my parenting time with that, and from there, he felt like I took his parenting time and wanted makeup time from that, stating that, you know, he hadn't before, but it was part of the parenting plan, my parenting time.
I'm going to share with you what has been pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 26. Do you see Respondents Exhibit 26 on your screen?
I do.
Okay. Is this a text exchange between you and Mr. Maynard, October 7th of 2022?
Yes,
Okay. Did you alter this in any way from the original text?
I did not.
Okay. I'll move to tender into evidence Respondents Exhibit 26.
No objection to 26.
Submitted.
So, what did you explain to Mr. Maynard as it relates to him reaching out about fall break?
That it was my fall break, and even years, and part of the parenting plan, this is my holiday weekend with her, and that always supersedes the regular parenting time.
And did you bring a copy of IAB school calendar during that time period, the 2022-2023 school calendar?
Yes,
Okay, I'm going to show you what I pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 29. Do you see Respondents Exhibit 29 on your screen?
I do.
Okay, is this a copy of IAB's school calendar from Choice Preparatory Academy for the
Yes.
2022-2023 school year?
It is.
Okay, did you alter this from the original format in which you received it?
I did not.
Okay, I move to tender into evidence Respondents Exhibit 29.
No objection to 29.
Submitted.
Okay, so what does Respondents Exhibit indicate as it relates to the issue of the fall break of 2022 with IAB?
This shows that her fall break would have been the week of October 10th through the 14th, and that fell on one of his weekends.
And did the parenting plan provide that you would have fall break from the time that she gets out of school for fall break until she goes back?
It does.
Okay, so looking at this calendar, would that have been on October 7th, her last day of school prior to that week of fall break?
Yes.
And so going back to the Respondents Exhibit 26 text exchange, is that what you all were discussing on October 7th?
Yes, it is.
Have you experienced with Mr. Maynard times where there would be confusion on his part as it relates to understanding the parenting plan?
Yes. I mean, there was even the most recent fall break where, although, you know, there was an issue the previous year when I exercised it, I brought IAV to the meeting point this year for fall break, and he wasn't there to exercise it. So I offered for him to still be able to spend, you know, his regular weekend with her. But because I had just drove 2 hours round trip, he would then have to, you know, come to me to be able to pick her up. So it's lots of confusion on it. And it some kind of way in his mind comes back to me stopping something, although I worked to follow the parenting plan.
You said this year there was an issue with the fall break where you went to the meeting location?
Yes. So for this year's fall break, he let me know that he wanted to exercise it, and I went to the fall break to the meeting spot on fall break, and Adrian was not there. I let him know that I was there and that I'd be returning home, and I even let him know, you know, when he'd be able to get her. He texted and harassed and called into the midnight hour behind that, very upset, stating that I was still in some way encroaching upon his parenting time, although I was allowing him and, you know, even facilitating it by bringing IAV to him.
Did you bring a copy of that text exchange as it relates to fall break this year? Okay,
I
I'm
did.
going to show you what has been pre-marked as Respondents Exhibit 47. Is this a fair and accurate copy of the text exchange between you and Mr. Maynard, October looks like October 5th of 2023 this year as it relates to fall break.
Yes, and there were several calls in between that as well.
Okay, did you alter this text from its original format in any way?
No,
Okay, I move to tender into evidence Respondents Exhibit 47.
And I just want to be clear, this is from October of 2023, correct?
Yes, we've already looked at the one from October 2022. That was the last exhibit. That was Exhibit 26. So
No
this
objection.
one is October 2023 this year.
No objection.
Go ahead.
And there's a photo here that's part of this text. What are we looking at?
that's the front of the gas station where we meet and the time that I was there.
Okay. Did Mr. Maynard ever show up?
He did not. I waited there for 30 minutes.
Okay. Now it looks like y'all had a back and forth exchange as it relates to fall break. What ultimately happened with regards to fall break this year?
Although he, as you can see, that message is at 10 o'clock, although he was calling well into midnight, just upset, irate, the same out of control type harassment. He ultimately ended up coming to pick her up from a meeting spot on this side of town the next day at 7:30.
Okay, when you say this side of town, what are you referring to?
Stone Mountain.
Okay. And so was he able to ultimately pick her up?
Yes, he was.
So despite the fact that he was not at the exchange location, you still facilitated Ivy going with her father during the fall break parenting time the next day?
Absolutely. I always want to make sure she can spend time with her dad.
Okay. Were there any other concerns you had about Mr. Maynard communicating with you about any travels out of town and providing notice?
That one was an interesting situation because we met out of state after the case had started. We met in
When you say
Myrtle.
met, we met, who is we?
So Ivy's father and I met in Myrtle Beach to exchange Ivy. Terrence and I and Evie went on vacation. Ivy let her dad know that she was going to Myrtle Beach. Her dad and her dad's family were also in Myrtle Beach at the time. So we verbally agreed to meet in Myrtle Beach at the time instead of, coming back to Atlanta. So Ivy was able to see her dad in Myrtle Beach. However, the next time there was a vacation situation, her dad had issue with me taking Ivy out of town, although we both had met out of town, previous to it, and there was no issue there. So these are the kind of situations where I say it's kind of like it's finding an issue. Although if it's convenient for him, there's no problem.
Do you leave Ivy at home alone to fend for herself or raise herself at all?
By no means, with my work schedule, especially, I'm here 99% of the time. So she's definitely by no means ever alone and definitely not fending for herself at all. No.
And do you have any concerns about Ivy's mental health?
I don't at all. While she has expressed some challenges with the things that have been said or told to her from the other side, she's cried. She's, expressed some hardships on what her dad has told her as far as
Your Honor,
what
I'm going to object as to hearsay from statements from the child.
I've
I'm going to sustain that objection.
And Judge, so my question was, did she have any concerns about the minor child's mental health? So it certainly is descriptive of the effect that it would have on the listener as far as, any of mom's reactions and how she would tend to that, if at all. But we're not using it for the truth of the matter asserted, but at least the effect on the listener as it relates to mom parenting Ivy.
You can just say she spoke to Ivy. She can tell me what effect it had on her. She can say, I spoke to Ivy and I put her in counseling, or I spoke to Ivy and I did something. She doesn't have to say specifically what Ivy told
her. So Ms. King, you've heard that directive from the court. So keep that in mind in your testimony to this court as you answer my question. My question was, were you concerned about, did you have any concerns regarding Ivy's mental health as, alleged by Mr. Maynard? And you indicated no, but you started to talk about what Ivy has heard from the other side and the effect that you've witnessed. Can you describe that effect that you've witnessed?
I have seen her cry. I've spoken with Ivy and I've seen her cry. I've seen Ivy, look and appear worried. But I hug her, we talk it out. I try to do different things that she likes to take her mind off of it. But no, outside of the things that I have seen as far as when she returns back from weekend visits, I haven't by any means seen any emotional or mental health concerns from her at all.
Are you asking for the court to deny the opposing party's request to change physical custody?
I am. I definitely feel like everything that I work to do with Ivy is in Ivy's best interest, not just now, but future. Literally in the things that she is interested in, educationally, in the things that she does. We love and care about her, and of course want the best for her in the long term and for her life at the end of the day. So I haven't seen any issue at all, and I don't foresee any issue, and I don't see any reason outside of opposing parties' desire, to change that. But there's nothing that's needed or wanted. I feel like she should be living here.
Have you been the primary parent attending to her medical needs?
Yes.
Okay. There was an exhibit entered last time we were here from Mr. Maynard as it related to Ivy's feet. And I cross-examined him about that, so I want to ask you about it. Are there any conditions, health concerns, safety concerns regarding Ivy's feet that you are aware of at all?
No, Ivy was born with a triangle toe that's a little bit harder, but in no way has any doctor that I've taken her to diagnosed her with any type of fungus, any type of issues with her feet, none of that. So she definitely does not have any health concerns regarding her feet at all.
Okay. And did you have an opportunity to have her checked out just like Mr. Maynard did?
I did. And one of them was actually right after Mr. Maynard let me know that he was able to take her to the doctors. So it's my understanding that Mr. Maynard took Ivy over the weekend, and then that next Monday I was able to take her. And her primary care doctor, who knows her regularly, disagreed with what the urgent care that he took her to stated and said. So I'm not quite sure where the urgent care doctor may have gotten that from, but her regular doctor has disagreed every time.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I asked Mr. Maynard about, and we saw the last time we were here, is that Ivy was in overall good health. Is that still the case?
Absolutely. She's always in good weight, good spirits, good health, growth wise, weight wise, all of that. No issues have ever been reported from any doctors.
And have just in summation, have you been the primary parent as it relates to Ivy's extracurricular activities and supporting her with that?
Yes, I have. Like I said, with the acting and certain things, it's kind of an uphill battle from her dad as far as his consent. But I absolutely do what I can to take her to the things that she asks, to be able to be involved in.
And you've already testified about the schooling, that you've been the primary parent handling the schooling as well. Is that correct?
That's correct.
As it relates to the issue of attorney's fees, would you like the court to reserve the issue of attorney's fees and allow you to submit through counsel a brief on the issue of attorney's fees?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Why are you seeking that relief?
From not just what Adrian has told me directly, but even in his messages, even in his testimony, it's been clear that it all has been a plan to get to this point from day one. It has always been an attempt to take Ivy from my custody, for no apparent reason outside of the things that he has tried to create over the years. And I have always worked to handle things outside of court, to be able to handle things between us, to be able to co-parent as co-parents should. And ultimately, it's just something that he has never been willing to do and has always wanted to go through courts and litigation. And for that reason, I feel like he should be responsible because, as he said, this has been something that he couldn't do then, but he could do now. He finally has enough evidence to do. And that's been the goal all along.
When you say, as he said, what are you referring to?
The last date where in his testimony, he stated he couldn't file for the case when he was living in Texas. Then, his next statement was, he couldn't file for custody when he moved to Georgia because he hadn't been around Ivy. Then, he kept asking around and, even kept making mention of filing papers, but didn't have enough evidence. And finally, with the COVID incident, he felt like he had enough evidence to go to the court and say, I want full custody. That's his words. And that's what I've experienced over the years for sure.
And do you have adequate food in your home for Ivy?
100%. I absolutely have food for her to eat, food that she can pick from. Absolutely. She's always well fed.
I have no further questions for Ms. King at this time, Judge. I just wanted to just be able to confirm on the record prior to us having a court reporter present. I just want to confirm that respondents exhibits 1, 2, 16, 17, 25, and 45 were already admitted into evidence.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so it's 3:51. I need to go back out. I need to handle the matter inside the courtroom. I'm thinking by the time we come back, it's probably going to be about 5-ish. So I think we should probably conclude for today and come back tomorrow and complete and finish tomorrow at 9 a.m.